Hello and welcome to the Golden Sports Report episode 82. I am Dylan,
Chris?
and we've got a great show planned tonight. We're going to recap the Hall of Fame game that took place on Sunday and maybe delve into a few more other football topics while we're here without some of the cast we anticipated, so we'll try to make it to an hour, but we'll see where we go. And stay tuned, we might get into some fantasy football stuff later, so if you're into that and playing, then maybe you can be interested and leave us some comments, and we'll get back to that as soon as we can, which would be next Sunday, where we will be back hopefully with a larger cast of hosts. So, as I mentioned, the NFL Hall of Fame game took place Sunday. The New York Giants faced off against the Buffalo Bills in Canton with a final score of Giants 17, Bills 13. Chris, what are your general opinions, thoughts, any areas of concern, anything you liked that you saw of the game?
Well, I'll start off, I'll go position by position, mostly. I'll start with quarterback, the offense here. Andy said it pretty well in his post the day after the Hall of Fame game. Jeff Toole 1, E.J. Manuel 0. I don't exactly agree with it because it's just one preseason game. You never know. EJ might have been having an off game again, but I was hoping more than 2 passes would have been completed, and he almost threw like 3 or 4 interceptions. So, although it was nice to see that the first time he tried to throw to Sammy Watkins, he overthrew him. So I'd rather see him overthrow someone who's going to easily be able to outrun the corners than underthrow him and have the corner pick it off and not really give Sammy a chance to run under it instead of having to run back to it. So like I said, I'd rather see him overthrow than underthrow. But he had a couple of bad passes, but overall he looked confident. He looked okay. Jeff Toole threw a touchdown pass to Robert Woods. Looking at the stats, Jeff Toole had 74 passing yards. Thad Lewis had 87. So, our backups did pretty good there. However, Ryan Nassib, backup quarterback for the Giants, had 139. Interesting fact, if any of those of you don't know, Ryan Nassib was the starting quarterback while Doug Marrone was at Syracuse. So I'm sure they had a nice reunion. So Jeff Toole looked okay. Thad Lewis threw an interception, I do believe. So he didn't look too great, but I don't know. First game of the year, can't really judge much. Rushing yards, Bryce Brown led our team with 40. CJ ran the ball, I think, once. He got like 2 yards, so that sucks. Bryce Brown got the ball a lot, and I saw Anthony Dixon get the ball a lot. Anthony Dixon looks huge. He's a scary-looking dude. Fred Jackson looked like Fred Jackson. He was making some good cuts and moves. They tried to throw C.J. Spiller right up the gut again, and he's too small for that. Still haven't learned, apparently. And let's move on from there. Just skip over fullback because there wasn't really any fullback highlights. Wide receiver. Our top two wide receivers when we started the game obviously were Sammy Watkins and Mike Williams, but Sammy didn't make a single catch. He got targeted 3 times. I don't think one was an overthrow and 2 were batted down. So he didn't make any drops either. So overall, he looked exciting. And on it was the second play of the game, he did some moves and he got right past the Giants corner that was on him. And then he blew past the safety. So it was amazing to see that. It's just like, if only EJ could have connected with that pass, that would have just been amazing. Mike Williams looked okay. He looked big. And we need that big wide receiver. We've got a bunch of small ones. So I think Mike Williams will end up having a spot on this team just because of his height. And he does actually have some big playability, and he's got some veteran experience, which is something that our wide receiver core is lacking. Robert Woods, once again, played amazing. He caught a touchdown and had just short of 50 yards receiving on a few catches. I saw the one play that was similar to a play he ran in the first preseason game that I saw him playing last year, where he just kind of like cut off across the middle with deep down the field. I think it was in between the safeties and the linebackers, and it worked so well for him, and he gained like a good 20, 30 yards on the play. So it was good to see for sure. He had got T.J. Graham, did okay. Yes, Chris Gregg made a couple of good catches, and Lee Smith actually got our first down of the game at tight end. Everyone thinks Lee Smith is a blocking tight end, but he caught a ball. So, offensive line looked a little shaky. Obviously, we didn't have our starting left tackle. And I don't think we had our starting right tackle either. I don't know if Eric Pierce was in there. But I know that Quangio looked like garbage. Our second round pick looked like absolute trash. They kept showing replays of how he's playing. He's missing blocks. He got beat once for a sack, although it did take them a while to get around him. But he missed a couple blocks, stuff like that. And he has been said he will be a development player, so we're not worried about that. He's a big guy, but it's not all it takes. Rest of our line looked okay. Defensively, our defensive line looked awesome. At least our first team defense looked amazing. We stopped the run. We stopped the pass. We sacked Eli Manning, causing him a fumble, and made Eli relive that awful season he had last year, where he led the league in turnovers. That will lead into a fantasy thing maybe later. But why to stay away from Eli or to go closer. Obviously, Kyle Williams had the sack. Marcel Darius was out there, but he looked okay. I guess he kind of looked out of shape, but maybe not. I know he failed the one physical, but then passed the next. So, Mario Williams looked awesome, getting some pressure on, and then Brandon Spikes looked was one scary looking dude. He stuffed a couple plays that I saw, and that was good to see. We had Nigel Bradham in there for Kiko Alonso would be. I didn't see who the other linebacker was, but I'm assuming it was probably Keith Rivers or Manny Lawson. We were out our top 2 corners, which kind of sucked. We were out McKelvin and Gilmore. But, they weren't too bad. safeties looked okay. I didn't really see much other than uh, the defensive line and linebackers looking okay. I did see a play by Preston Brown, our um, linebacker that we got out the draft last year, and the play he made, I don't remember exactly what it was, but I remember seeing it and looking at it and be like, wow, we might have just gotten another steal because that guy looks pretty good. Um, I think it was a pass deflection or some sort of really good pass read. Um, he read it real well, and then I saw him make a run block stuff, run tackle, and that was cool. And that's pretty much Brian Mormon won the punting battle, in my opinion. Just because he's Brian here. Yeah. And that's about it.
All right. Very nice analysis, very thorough, definitely. Mine, I guess I'll start with the Giants because I feel like I'm going to have a lot less to say about them. Eli Manning coming off of a pretty bad year. Um, he was 6 for 7, 43 yards, so pretty good in terms of completion percentage. But I mean, it doesn't mean Curtis Painter completed every pass attempt he had, and we know that he's not anything great. He was back up to Peyton Manning forever back in Indy. But so Manning, there's a lot of debate whether he'll bounce back or if he'll struggle again. In terms of running back, with the David Wilson injury, which we'll talk about a little later, most likely, it seems that the featured back this year will be Rashad Jennings. He got 7 carries, 23 yards. But another interesting name is Andre Williams, who is a rookie from Boston College. He also had 7 carries, but for 48 yards and a touchdown. And some people are reading into that as, like, don't overreact, he's not going to be anything special, but others are saying that there's a very good chance that he could take the job from Rashad Jennings and even be a very solid running back for the Giants going forward. I know I've talked to Andy about this. He's not here today, but he's told me how Williams is sort of in the mold of Brandon Jacobs, and we saw how successful Jacobs was for a while under Tom Coughlin in the Giants offense. So that could be pretty good for them. In terms of their receiving, nothing really stood out to me. The Washington guy, who's a rookie, caught a 73-yard touchdown pass, so that was disappointing when that happened. But it's only the preseason. That's essentially all I have to say about the Giants. I think most of their conversation, because we didn't see Victor Cruz, we didn't see I didn't see Victor Cruz or Odell Beckham Jr. play at all, and those were 2 guys that I've sort of been interested in seeing how they interact in the Giants offense. But anyways, on to the Bills. I'll start with EJ. I've always been a great supporter of EJ, and if Andy was here tonight, I'd have to be defending him a lot harder because Chris mentioned his Facebook post saying Jeff Toole 1, EJ Manuel 0, and I don't want to disagree with that because EJ Manuel, he didn't look that great during the game. He only went like 2 for 7 or something like that. Yeah, 2 for 7, 19 yards. So obviously we were hoping for a better performance, but it is the first game of preseason, and and he was out there against tougher players than Jeff Toole and Thad Lewis were. So that also factors in a bit, in my opinion. So I think EJ will be fine. We'll get to see more of him next week in our game I should have looked up who we were playing, but we'll see him for at least a little while. The running game, CJ Spiller only had 1 carry for 2 yards. Fred Jackson only had 2 carries for 6 yards. I don't think it's having 3 carries between the two of them is probably more so because we've seen them before. We know what they're capable of, and there's sort of an idea of what to expect going forward. Whereas Bryce Brown's a new guy. We brought him in, 7 carries, 40 yards. And then Dixon and Wingo, a couple of guys like that are probably going to be competing for depth positions and spots on our team, even though we have 3 very good top running backs. Receiving, Sammy Watkins went without a catch, and I'm not overly worried. ESPN did a little segment about overreactions, and they say that reading into Sammy Watkins going without a catch and saying he'll be a bust is definitely an overreaction. So I'm sure we'll see great things from him. He may have times this season where you don't see as much of him as you'd like, but that's because he's a rookie. But I'm sure we'll see the flashes of brilliance that made him a 4th overall pick and have made him possibly supposed to develop into one of the great receivers in the league within a couple of years once he enters his prime. And Mike Williams, 1 catch for 11 yards. That's solid. He's new to the team. Robert Woods, not new to the team. He didn't start the game because we had Williams and Watkins in, but he had 4 receptions for 49 yards and a touchdown, showing that he can come in, he can be solid. I don't think he's going to blow us away with amazing #1 receiver numbers this year, but by all means, he could definitely come in and be a very good #2, or he could be he could end up as our #3. But in my personal opinion, I prefer him to Williams. But I'm sure you can argue either way and make a pretty good point. It's just a personal opinion. And then we saw a little bit from Greg and Graham. Bryce Brown had 2 receptions for 12 yards, so catching out of the backfield for him is something we get to see and something that we could utilize throughout the year when he comes in. And so I remain pretty comfortable with our receiving situation going forward. I know it's only 1 game, but so obviously that's not going to throw me off. Offensive line, I know that our left tackle was out with an injury, and what I thought was interesting was that the very first play of the game, I noticed that Seantrell Henderson, our 7th round pick, was in with our offensive line and our starting players, and he made some solid blocks, and I think he was, at least for a couple plays, Henderson, I think, was blocking Pierre-Paul, but I don't know how long that lasted, but Pierre-Paul was a dominant defensive end in the league a couple of years ago. I know his numbers have sort of strayed from it, but he's still very talented. And then defense, as Chris mentioned, our defensive line looked very good. Kyle Williams forcing that fumble. I expect our defensive line to put up a very good year. Hopefully our linebackers and defensive backs can follow suit, and because having a good defense would surely help us in our efforts to be in contention this year, because we know it's been very long since we've been there. So it's good to see there are some good things from the defensive line, and Brandon Spikes, as Chris mentioned, looked solid. It's really a shame because our defense could have been. I would make the case that we could have been top. Our defense could be tops in the league if we had both Spikes and Kiko. And I know Kiko hurts us, but we should be able to still defend some teams pretty solidly. Hopefully, keep Tom Brady from stomping all over us and win some of those division games, and well, as well as the other 10 games that we're going to be playing. But yeah, overall, I guess to the punter, Dombrowski didn't look bad, but I'd be surprised if he took the job from Mormon. And in terms of kicking, Carpenter was 2 for 2 in field goal attempts, Long of 51. He made one extra point as they tested the extra point from the 15 this year now. And I don't. After seeing the kickoff specialist, I don't see the point, because once they moved the kickoff to the 35, now with like 90% of kickoffs are touchbacks. So you don't need a guy special on your team to kick it into the end zone so the other team can kneel it. So that's my opinion on that. And it was a disappointing to lose the game, but we got to see Andre Reed get inducted, and that was great. So I'm not going to worry about the loss. Preseason isn't really something to base expectations for regular season on in terms of record, more so in terms of just getting a chance to see the players perform on an actual field in the game, more so because some of our viewers may remember Mark pointed out the fact that the Detroit Lions once went undefeated in a preseason and then followed that up by losing every single game that year. So you never know with this league.
Yeah, and someone, I think it was Mark, also posted a link in the, was it you? It was either you or Mark who posted a link in the Facebook chat about how E.J. Manuel and Jim Kelly's rookie seasons were almost identical, and how their stats were, and like teams they lost to. And like the whole time, like half the article, they thought they were talking about E.J. Manuel, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, and by the way, this article is about Jim Kelly, not E.J. So don't give up on E.J. because he had a bad rookie season. Jim Kelly had an awful rookie season, and wasn't very good for a few years, and then he turned into the best quarterback this team's ever seen. So
yeah, definitely. I mean, it's not fair to assume that E.J. Manuel is going to have a career like that of Jim Kelly, but it's too early to say that he won't, to be completely honest. I mean, after 1 year, it's really hard to predict, like, oh, this guy's going to be a Hall of Famer. There's very few players that you can call that for, but we don't need a Hall of Fame quarterback to win a Super Bowl. It's been done with. We talked recently on our chat that Super Bowls have been won with non-elite quarterbacks, because if you think about it, there are only a handful of quarterbacks in the league that at least I would consider elite, and that's Brady, Manning, Breeze, and Rodgers. I tried to make the case for Cam Newton, but we'll see this year when he has no receivers if he's really that elite. Having seen it in game, what are your thoughts on the NFL testing out the extra point being kicked from the 15? Do you think it's something that they'll test out further or implement for next season, or do you think it's just gonna live out its trial run and they'll go back to normal?
I think they'll probably test it for most of probably the preseason, all of it. I'd like to see them probably test it for every team, just so it's not just the Giants and the Bills. And I'd like to see, the whole preseason test it. Whether or not we use it this year or not, is a different story. I'd like to see them use it, and if not, then just give the team 7 points because the 99.999999% of extra points are made. So it's a thing. Just give them 7 points or make them kick from 15. I'd rather see you kick from the 15, make it a little bit more difficult. So, yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I was gonna say it does add that element of it's not a. I mean, we see occasionally when extra points missed, very, very, very occasionally when it's missed, but it's usually either the kicker just shanks it or maybe but when you move it back to the 15, there's more things that can come into play. Maybe if there's bad weather, I mean, I think even in the Hall of Fame game when I was watching, I noticed that I don't know if it was Carpenter or the Giants kicker, but their extra points weren't going straight down the middle, and they were kicking from the 15. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. I don't think it'll be implemented this year. They'll test it out, and then they'll probably discuss it throughout the next calendar year until next season starts before making an official decision. So, but it could be an interesting upcoming rule change. I know we've been discussing a lot of possibilities in the coming years of things of that nature.
Yeah, they could make it like one of those old NFL blitz games where you score and you get the option to get automatic extra point, or you can go for 2. I remember I always used to go for 2. But, yeah.
Definitely lots of options. It's gonna maybe this isn't the only thing they test. Maybe next preseason they test out another method, and then I don't know if this would be dragged out over a couple of years, but if they don't like this, then I could surely see them testing out a different thing rather than just saying, never mind, we're keeping it how it is. Okay, so did you guys talk about the Hall of Fame induction ceremony on the last episode?
I talked about Andre Reed. I don't think we really talked about anyone else, though. I didn't really watch anyone else. I was just kind of like, yeah, Andre Reed. I know Michael Strahan's was funny, but that's about it.
Yeah, I personally didn't see really any of the speeches. I saw some clips of Andre Reed's, and him catching that one pass from Jim Kelly on the stage was nice to see, knowing what Kelly's been going through. So, but in terms of the inductees, do you have any thoughts or opinions on, not necessarily like their speeches or anything, but like the players that got inducted, and do you think I think it'd be hard to argue that they didn't deserve it, but maybe that if you like completely agree that they got in, and because some notable names have been left off and are eligible next year, of course, in the following year. So I guess
Continue.
Sorry, I sort of worded that terribly. It's my first time hosting. No, it's not, but it's my first time hosting in a long time because Andy's been on all the time, and we didn't expect him to not be on tonight. But in terms of, because I mean, watching the induction ceremony, a lot of names, these are players that have played during our lifetimes. Michael Strahan, we're all familiar with. Andre Reed, less so because we know when he was around, but can't remember his name. I'm failing. The Seattle line, Walter Jones, Seattle offensive lineman, always fantastic. So
Yeah, Walter Jones had 9 holding penalties in his entire career. 9.
Bills offensive linemen usually do that per game. But,
Yeah.
that's a really impressive stat. 9 in
Right?
his entire career.
Mm-hmm.
It's that doesn't happen like ever anymore.
Yeah.
Everyone's getting penalties, breaking the rules, getting suspended.
Stomping people in the face, shit like that. Getting in fights. Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
league's definitely changed a little bit over the past couple of years.
Yeah. I know a couple of the Hall of Famers actually said that, the game isn't about fun anymore. I know Andre Reed said that the game used to be about, playing with your friends and having a good time, and it wasn't about winning. It was about playing the sport you loved, and now it's all about, win, 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 get your money and go home. And you know, and it's true. Like nowadays, all people care about is getting money and winning, and it's not so much about just playing the game.
That's the unfortunate aspect of it. I mean, these players are making millions of dollars to play the game, and it's it does become less about the game. I remember reading once that Peyton Manning said that he would stop playing when the game stopped being fun for him. And I mean, he's been around a while. He's obviously a veteran player, one of the best in the league, and he's been doing it for a long time, and he still truly enjoys it. And then we see people like, I don't want to say these guys aren't enjoying the game, but Jamal Charles held out, got a new deal, and immediately after Marshawn Lynch thought he should be getting more money, so he held out too and got $1 million more in base salary. So,
Yeah, it's Jamal Charles got underpaid by like this day and age, like what you would think a star player would get paid, but I mean it's still a lot of money. Like, yeah,
yeah, of course, everyone makes a lot of money. I think even league minimum is like $500,000, or at least that's what it is in the other leagues. So you don't even have to be that good to be making the six-figure paychecks.
maybe I'll go into the NFL and just kind of like be really bad, and then sign like a 1-year contract with the Bills. Be like, I just want some money. That's it. You don't play me, I'll just sit there.
Some players do that, it seems. Like,
Yeah.
just I mentioned Curtis Painter. How much money do you think he made sitting behind Peyton Manning all those years, going to the playoffs every year, and gets to play in preseason? But after that, he gets his one start once Peyton's locked up the playoff spot.
Yeah. That'd be pretty cool. That'd be pretty awesome. Just kind of ride the pine of behind an elite quarterback, and just kind of like, hey, yeah, I'm here, making money, sitting on the bench, enjoying the job, talking into this headphone that I can joke to the starting quarterback. They're like, oh, look, stupid out there. Ah, but you're a lot better than me. Something stupid like that. I don't know. Yeah.
While we're still on the top, we've sort of drifted off a little bit, but while we're still sort of in football mode and the Hall of Fame, do you have any sort of predictions or something of people who may be inducted as soon as next year, or know of any players who have gained eligibility that you think, or maybe people that missed this year even?
I don't know. Give me a second to look up the who's going to be, because I don't know who's going to be eligible. Um, Brett Favre, Terrell Owens, is he eligible next year? I think, oh yeah, Orlando Pace will definitely be in there next year. Orlando Pace was an amazing um, offensive tackle. Marvin Harrison was eligible this year, got snubbed. That's disappointing to see. I didn't know he was eligible this year, but he needs to be in there because he was amazing. Um, Kurt Warner. I don't know if Kurt Warner is going to be a guy in there right away. Junior Seau is going to be eligible next year. I don't know if he will. Jerome Bettis has been eligible since 2011, I guess. I don't know why he still isn't in there. That's stupid. Jerome Bettis should be in there. That guy's name's Dick. Brett Favre isn't eligible until 2016. Neither is T.O. So I think Brett Favre will be a first ballot guy. T.O. might be, but I'd like to see him not be, just because after the San Francisco, his play kind of went down. Like, he had a good year in Philly, and then that was about it. Wasn't very good after that. I know when he played for the Bills, he was pretty much garbage. So, that's about it right now. Oh, LT. Oh, well, LT is not eligible until 2017, so that's Daniel Thompson will definitely be a first ballot guy. He should be unanimous for sure. Safety, one of my favorite players of my childhood. Tampa Bay Buccaneers safety John Lynch. That guy was one mean player. Played for Denver after Tampa Bay, but he was just an animal. He's been eligible since 2013, so last year he was eligible. So I'd like to see him, if not next year, then definitely the year after that, because he was amazing. So, yeah, that's interesting. Ray Lewis and Brian Urlacher are both become eligible in the same year. Be interesting to see if both, if not like one of them, will get in. But, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with definitely Pace, great offensive lineman. Marvin Harrison I probably should have gotten in this year. It's been tough the past couple of years for wide receivers, and I think that's why Andre Reed was a finalist so many times. Like, I think 2 years ago was when Chris Carter got inducted. This year, Andre Reed got inducted. I think it's got to be almost a sure thing that Marvin Harrison is going to be the next wide receiver. And Kurt Warner's eligible next year. I think there's a good chance that he could make it. I don't think he's a definite first ballot, but I think he's got a very good chance come next year when they whenever the voting takes place. Tony Dungy, one of my favorite coaches. I was a big Colts and Peyton Manning fan when I was younger. Always second to the Bills, of course. But Tony Dungy, great coach. Jerome Bettis, I was also surprised to find out that he's been a finalist the past 3 years and yet to earn his entry. You have to think it should be coming up sometime soon. I know us Bills fans have been saying for a long time that Andre Reed deserved it. I'm sure the Steelers fans, until Bettis is inducted, are going to be saying the same thing. As you mentioned, Favre, first ballot Hall of Famer. T.O., I don't know. Um, he did have some great seasons, and it would be interesting to see him get in. He might be the last player to ever don a Buffalo Bills uniform to get in for a while, because now that Reed's in, it's who else do we have that's going to make it? Unless we can convince the voters that Steve Tasker earned a spot, but special teamers don't usually get it. The first ever Hall of Fame punter's in, but so maybe that opens the door for one of the best ever special teamers to make it. So I would love to see Steve Tasker get in. Partially because he's a Bill, and partially because, I mean, I thought it was cool seeing Ray Guy get in as a punter and being the first ever. And he said in his speech, the Hall of Fame finally has a complete team. So it's a less recognized position, but when you see how good somebody was at that position, then, I mean, you have to give them some sort of like honor or recognition for what they did. Do you think, personally, I feel like I know the answer to this, but do you think that Steve Tasker should or will? Two separate questions. Do you think he should, and do you think he will get into the Hall of Fame anytime in the near future?
I don't know about near future. I think he should, just because he was such a great special teams specialist, um, and he's Buffalo Bills. So that obviously we're pretty biased, but he was great. Okay, he was awesome on the special teams. Um, but will they add that in there? But you see how long it took them to put a punter in. So I don't know. Be interesting to see. I don't know about near future. Maybe like 10 years. But I definitely like to see him in there.
It'd definitely be awesome. Bills fans would be going crazy if we got news that he made it. He's, I don't think he's never been a finalist, but I know he's made it decently far into the voting for the past couple of years. But you have to think that who knows how many people are gonna, more people will get on board, or maybe he'll just be one of those guys who's always close and it'll take either a really long time, or maybe he'll just never get in, and that's unfortunate, but sometimes that's how it works. And these, he'll always be recognized as one of the greats by us Bills fans. So I guess that wraps up Hall of Fame. Spent a pretty good amount of time on both the game and the players and all of that. So we can move on a little bit. Did you want to talk about David Wilson as a final word, or would you like to speak a little bit about that now as a topic?
We could just do that. We could do that as a topic. Doesn't really matter. Basically, it'll be a short topic. Obviously, it's a sad story, but he has said that. Your message. Okay. Huh. Good excuse, Andrew. Anyways, viewers can't see that, so it's disappointing to see that a player has to retire at the age of 23. I just saw that a tight end, Vic Ballard or something, or Nick Ballard, some tight end had to retire at 26, so that's disappointing. Um, but David Wilson was looking to be like a star running back in this league. He's playing. He's fast, really fast, and he was pretty good. Um, he's supposed to have a breakout year last year. He got injured, and then I don't know if he got injured again or what, but um, he was told earlier this week that by his doctors that he needs to not play football um, like ever again. He needs to quit the game of football, and because his neck injury was just so severe, and that's disappointing. It really is. I don't know if there's like a special neck brace or anything that he could have worn, but apparently not. So, oh, Andy's in. Maybe. Um,
It says, can you hear me?
oh, yep, I can hear you. Can't see you.
Here,
Well,
we don't
it
have
says,
visual.
I'm sorry. I'm joining mid-show. Um, I guess I stopped whatever you're talking about. Continue on.
All right. Good. Thank you for being totally rude, Andy. Just kidding. I will. Um, but yeah, it's disappointing to see David Wilson be out at the age of 23. It's just he was so young and he had so much potential, but in an interview, he's like he doesn't want people to feel sorry for him. He got to live and fulfill his dream of playing in the NFL, scoring some touchdowns, and I watched an interview and it was pretty emotional. He was breaking down into tears and whole 9 yards, and it's just disappointing to see such a good player's career come to such a that kind of an end that quickly. Um, I know my brother actually played defensive end and center for my high school when he was in, and he was amazing. He was so good, and he was pretty dominant. But this one game, there was this big pile up for a run play, and it took a good 15, 20 minutes to get the pile off, and by the time it was off, he was on the bottom, and he couldn't move or anything, and he ended up having to go to the hospital, and he had such a bad neck injury that um, unless he wore like this ridiculously big neck brace, he would never be able to play football again, and so he just kind of gave it up. He never got back into it, but he's good. He's really good.
All right, so Andy, are you with us?
Yeah, I am. Is it showing that UCam thing as a picture, or is it actually showing me?
It's showing a UCAM logo.
This piece of garbage. I don't even know.
If you're looking for like an upside thing, that you can thing is better looking than you.
It says off. Try to turn it back on. It it updated apparently. Oh,
I burned him and he didn't even hear me.
Oh, we can see you, Andy. We have visual.
Go back to the UCam.
I really want to test the audio, so afterwards we test the audio. But so we're talking about David Wilson.
Yes. What are your
Um,
thoughts on the situation? And go ahead.
well, I was just the reason why I'm late to the show is because I was at a little league football practice and they're teaching that heads up stuff now, and I can see why David Wilson, had a serious neck injury, wanted to come back, wanted to play, and he returned. But when he returned, he got dinged up in one of the first couple practices, and got hurt. I'm sure you guys already said the backstory and stuff, but players are starting to realize more now. You've seen three players retire this offseason with injuries that they just felt like, I'm walking away from the game. I've completed what I've wanted to complete in terms of, Wilson. He got to live his dream. He said, not many people get to live their dream. They only get to dream it, and I got to live it. So I can walk away from this game, play with my kids, do whatever. Sounds like Rashard Mendenhall earlier in the year. He was like, I'm going to retire. I'm going to leave all this money on the table. I have a Super Bowl. I have this. I have that. I don't need to play. Jake Ballard today, he retired, 26 years old. Not a neck injury, but he retired. And these players, they're retiring earlier now. And oh, the cat. But they it sucks. It sucks, but that's why they're teaching all this new stuff. This heads up. I literally watched it almost step by step for the first time today, and it's a different type of game, and I haven't seen it in a game yet, and I'll see it, in a few weeks. But that's why they're doing it. It's a shame. It's a shame what happened to your brother, and what's ended Dave Wilson's career, and contact sport. I don't know what else to say. It sucks. Shitty injuries and all sorts of situations.
Yeah, I mean, you never want to see a career-ending injury in any sport, whether you like the player or not, really. But I was glad to see, in at least in the interviews, that Wilson was in good spirits about it. You guys mentioned he got to live his dream, and now he's walking away from it, and that's the key thing because they're saying if he kept playing, then a severe neck injury, then you never know what's gonna happen. You'd rather walk away from it while you still can and be able to live your life than someday you're getting carted off the field and you don't know if you're going to ever walk again or who knows what happens. So sometimes it's best to just take a step back, be like, I did what I've set out to do, and then move on to the next part. I don't know what is in David Wilson's future. Being a father, I don't know if he has any sort of aspirations to, or if he would be any good at either becoming some sort of coach or some sort of analyst. But he's never going to see this, but I wish him the best of luck in the next phase of his life, and it's sad to see what happened. So, since Andy came in a little late, we still have we still got some time. So, Andy, what are your thoughts? We started off the show with the Hall of Fame game. What are your thoughts on the game? Any concerns? Anything you liked that you saw? Anything that you really didn't like?
I feel like that's a loaded question. Did you already discuss, Chris? Did you defend me or Dylan? What was your? I don't want to repeat the EJ
I
Manuel thing.
I did a bit of both. I mentioned your Facebook post, but I also defended EJ to a certain extent. I said he looked awful because he did, but I also said we can't give up. There's always hope.
Well, I don't know. The reason all right. So the Hall of Fame game, it we were out our two top tight ends, two cornerbacks, as I said, and me and Chris, during the game we talked about it, but EJ at the end, his stats, we even said last show, it was like 2 for 7 for 19 yards. It's like, this is garbage. And I know that I feel a little stronger towards EJ in terms of a negative because it's like, well, there are some things that are lacking in his game. And, it may have only been one game so far this year, but it's the truth when I say Jeff Toole. I'll defend my Facebook post. Jeff Toole played better than EJ Manuel on Sunday night. Now EJ could play better than him the next 4 nights, but right now Jeff Toole played better than EJ in game one, and EJ looked terrible. He had Sammy and blew it, and it was a poor showing all around. Sure it was a close game, but really game one, it is game one. Everyone's got rust. This is lucky for our young team. Like I said last episode, a young team, they need that extra game. But when you have your players, like EJ play that bad, you got to take notice. Some people take it as a grain of salt, and some people say, well, that was 20% of the preseason, and he played like crap. Next week, he's going to play more, and we'll see what happens. You got to remember, the Giants aren't that good either. Like, they're better than the Bills, but they're not I don't think they were a playoff team last year. 2 years removed from the Super Bowl. But, no, 3 years removed from the Super Bowl. My bad. But, you also look at a positive. Central Henderson did very well against Jason Pierre-Paul. I don't know if you guys mentioned that, but Pierre-Paul only got by him once. And that's pretty good. A 7th-round pick, first game at left tackle in the NFL against one of the best defensive ends in the game in terms of pass rushing, and keeps him off of EJ and Toole. So that's a thing. Robert Woods may have been our best player all night, in my opinion. I saw him make a catch, and he literally ran another 15, 20 yards and actually worked for those yards. And it was like, this guy wants to be that number 2 wide receiver. Actually, he doesn't want to be the number 2. He wants to be the number 1. Sure, Sammy Watkins is going to get it, but, he's working for it. This may be preseason, but he's trying. So, I don't know. I didn't like EJ's game, obviously. I liked Henderson and Woods. So, that was my opinion on it. Don't they play Thursday, tomorrow? When do they play the Panthers?
They play Friday.
Okay, Friday. Hope you see more in that game. Probably, I expect the starters to play a whole quarter. So, that'll be something different. In regards to your jet, go with the flow. Want to do it? Go. I don't know what you guys have talked about already, so I joined late.
We talked about Hall of Fame game, Hall of Fame eligible players coming up, players who got snubbed. Steve Tasker, whether or not he will eventually be in the Hall of Fame years down the line. What else we talked about? I think that's it, really. And then we talked about David Wilson.
I'll propose. Sorry, I was just gonna say I'll propose the question to Andy since he just got here. When Chris mentioned we talked about Steve Tasker, do you think it's sort of a two-part question? Do you think Steve Tasker should ever get into the Hall of Fame, and do you think he ever will? Because we discussed this following up that now that there's a punter, do you think they would expand and consider more special teams than they have in the recent past?
It's tough because you got the Bills bias where you want to say, of course he is. He was one of the star players on the '90s. He still has lived around Buffalo and all that, but he, I don't know the numbers in terms of like, I don't know if they considered special team tackles then, or the impact he had because I didn't see him, and Did he go to the Pro Bowl a lot as a special teams guy? Because if he had like, you know, a ton of Pro Bowls, the most of all time of all special teams players, then sure. That means he's the best special team player in the history of the league. He should be in. Will he? Not anytime soon. And you know what? Less and less every year because the the lesser they emphasize special teams in terms of these kickoffs and the punts and let's make the extra points different. Let's kick from the 35 so they can't really return it and this and that. That takes away the emphasis on the special teams guy. It'll be a long forgotten thing that you had a gunner on your punt team that was able to help you pin the other team down within the 10-15 yard line, didn't allow any return. So should he, if he's the best of all time at his position, then yes, he should. Will he? I doubt it.
To follow that up, I searched him on the internet when you were talking because you proposed a question about his Pro Bowls and stuff, and we all know he's in the Bills Wall of Fame. We know that he went to 4 Super Bowls with the team, but he went to 7 Pro Bowls, the most by a special teamer, and he's the only special team player to ever win a Pro Bowl MVP, which he did in 1992. So
There you go.
that's pretty good stats for, I mean, normally you don't think of special teamers, but it's hard to argue against what he's done for our team. And he debuted on the Oilers, but most of his career, obviously, with the Bills. And he was a 9th-round pick. Up for debate, but I think maybe it's because I'm a Bills fan. I think it's hard to argue that he's not the best special teamer of all time. But we'll see. Should be an interesting thing to follow. Now that Ray Guy's in, as we said, maybe people will warm up to the idea.
Yeah.
All right. So, do you guys want to talk some fantasy football tonight, or would you like to save that for a future episode, maybe?
Isn't it us 3 Sunday?
I don't know if I close or not.
How far are you
Which
guys?
would be important.
Want to? Again, I showed up late. I feel like a dick.
No. Oh, well, I said I wasn't going to talk about any sleepers, but I would feel free to talk about busts and players who I don't think are going to be very good.
We're not playing those games. You're going to show your hand to the audience.
No, maybe to the audience, but not to people in my league.
In case the audience doesn't know, we're all in a fantasy football league together, so that may be why we seem reluctant to give up any of our sleepers or thoughts on the overall season. Although we do want to provide you with some of our fantasy analysis. So,
I heard Chris really likes Stephen Ridley this year. He said that guy is going to be a stud.
Yep, totally. Stephen Ridley, for sure starter. He's gonna learn how to hold on to that ball.
In the comments below, say if you believed Chris when he was sarcastic about Stephen.
here we'll just do a little sneak peek of fantasy, and since we alluded to him earlier when Chris and I were talking about the game, Eli Manning for this year, what do you expect?
I'll go first. I expect he's either boom or bust for sure. There's no middle ground with Eli Manning. He's either going to win the Super Bowl or he's going to be the worst quarterback in the league. I think he could have a bounce back year, but he lost a lot of offensive linemen. The them retiring, so I think he's going to get sacked a lot. He's going to be under a lot of pressure, and he's going to throw a lot of picks again. So I would stay away from him for sure. I think, honestly, I think he's more likely to be a bust than a boom, for sure, in my book.
Andy, thoughts on Eli Manning?
Well, I would say the loss of Hakeem Nicks is a big deal, but Hakeem Nicks rarely played anyway. He was always hurt. Um, you know, the they drafted Beckham, and that was a good pick by them. I'll give away one of my sleepers. Odell Beckham Jr. Will he be Hakeem Nicks or will he not? Cruz had a bad year last year. I don't know who their tight end is because Ballard's gone. Um, Less of a running game. It sounds like EJ. Yeah, almost said EJ Manuel. Eli Manning's going to have a bad year, definitely, no doubt. If he's there in the 20th round, and I'm drafting my fourth quarterback because that's what me and Dylan are doing. We're drafting Eli Manning just so then nobody else gets good players. They're going to have to start EJ Manuel, like Jake Locker and things of that nature.
Don't use your trickery on me. I know Dylan likes to take Johnny Manziel in the last round.
Johnny Manziel. You said boom or bust. Johnny Manziel fits that category in my mind. That's just an aside. That's just an aside. Personally, Eli Manning, I wouldn't expect him to be as bad as he was last year, but I'm not expecting him to be like a every week fantasy starter. It's like if you need a bye week fill-in and he has a good matchup that week, then feel free. But I wouldn't trust him immediately. If he has a couple of great games, then get on him. We've seen him be a great quarterback before, so should be interesting to follow up. And Andy, you there? Frozen.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay,
Oh.
your image is frozen. I just wanted to make sure. Moving on, let's just to continue. I don't want to talk about one player, so
How would we do like our top fives at each position? Our top five personal ranking.
could go for that. Andy, up for
Yeah.
that?
Yeah,
Is that what
I'll
the?
do
Yeah.
it. I have no fear. I'll get 5 sleepers. I'm not afraid.
Who wants to go first? We'll start. I guess we'll start with quarterback.
I'll go first. Not worried about it. Obviously, you got your reigning fantasy champion, EJ Manuel at number 1. Should be the first overall pick, unless Wes Welker is still on the board. Obviously, you got to take Wes Welker number 1 overall. For those of you who don't know, I don't know if we ever mentioned this joke before, but last year in my fantasy league, before Andy and Dylan were in it, one of the other hosts, Nick, had the first overall pick and took Wes Welker, which solid 20-point-a-game player, but he's not going to win you any championships. But for reals, the fantasy champion, Peyton Manning, number 1 quarterback. For me, I think Aaron Rodgers is going to be the number 2 quarterback next year. It kind of sucks that he's out for Michael Finley, but he's got some pretty good wide receivers on his team still. Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, and then he's got Jared Boykin, who actually showed some good ability last year. Drew Brees is obviously Jimmy Graham, and they still got Marcus Colston. Drew Brees comes in at number 3 for me, and they also have rookie wide receiver Brandon Cooks, who is apparently looking really good in training camp. And then at number 4, I have to go with Andrew Luck here. Originally, I did have the number 5 guy on my list at number 4, but just because the number 5 guy has throws a lot of picks and interceptions, I'm going to go with Andrew Luck at number 4, just because he's got T.Y. Hilton, who showed up last year in about 3 games. Be wary of T.Y. Hilton. He had 2 or 3 games where he actually was relevant in fantasy football. The rest of them, meh. And they weren't even like back-to-back the last 3 games or anything like that. No, they were random. It was like week 9, week 11, and then week 16. It was so random with T.Y. Hilton. Then obviously Hakeem Nicks, if he can get back to Hakeem Nicks form, he's got 3 starting wide receivers on that team, and with Reggie Wayne as well. So Andrew Luck is for the number 4. And then at number 5, we got Matt Stafford. Obviously Calvin Johnson. They bring in Golden Tate, Eric Ebron, Reggie Bush, Joyce Bell. They've got a lot of pass catchers on that offense. So Matt Stafford could end up throwing a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns, but you also got to worry because he's also going to throw a shit ton of interceptions. Sure, he might end up with 40 touchdowns this year. We'll have 25 interceptions. So be wary with that. You guys want me to move on to running back next, or you guys want to do quarterbacks and then?
Let's do it position by position, I think. So, Andy, you got your top 5 quarterbacks for us?
Same top 3. I'm going to go Stafford at 4 because he's got Tate and Ebron. So that's an addition over Calvin Johnson and Nate Burleson and Brandon Pettigrew, so it's only going to get better in Detroit.
Nate Burleson's no longer on the team.
Wait, who?
Nate Burleson's not on the team anymore.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, Golden Tate is such an upgrade over Burleson. So
Yeah.
that's why I had Stafford at 4. And 5, I'm going to pick RG3 because of the addition of Deshaun Jackson. So maybe what's his face, Jordan Reed, do a little bit better. So I'm thinking RG3 at number 5.
All right.
Play my sleepers out, guys. I'm not afraid. RG3 is my sleeper.
As we know, you're the huge Russell Wilson fan. It's good of you to come to the right side with RG3. As for my top 5 quarterbacks, Peyton Manning number 1, of course. After the year he posted last year, it's hard to pick against him. Next, I think Rodgers and Brees make up the top 3. That's pretty agreeable throughout the fantasy community that those 3 make up the top 3. I would probably take Rodgers over Brees, given the opportunity to make that selection in a draft. Of course, Brees is always solid and always trustworthy to put up numbers, but Rodgers is younger, and we know what he's capable of. But after that, that's where it gets a little bit cloudy. I mentioned Cam Newton earlier, and I want to put him at either 4 or 5, but because he's going to get the rushing yards. We don't know. He's going to have Greg Olsen and Kelvin Benjamin catching his passes, hopefully, but we don't know quite how good they'll be. So he'll get the rushing yards, but I think I'm going to leave him out of my top 5, unfortunately. And I think I'm going to go Stafford at 4. brought in Tate and Ebron. He's going to pass for a lot of yards, most likely. Detroit throws it with Stafford like 700 times, and he could be in line for his second 5,000 yard season, maybe. Maybe not. We'll see how it works out. Um, and then at 5, I think I'm going to go Andrew Luck. I think he's. I think Luck is a safe choice to be around that area, top 5 or so. But I mean, he could, because whereas Stafford, we're expecting him to have a big year because of course he has Megatron and these new additions to the offense. But I could completely see there's a little bit of injury risk with Stafford, and I could see him slipping down or being one of the top couple guys. And then Cam Newton, he could be up or down. I think Luck's a safer choice out of them. But so I'm going to put him at 5 personally. And up next is running back.
All right, back to the best fantasy on with the team of Sean Top. Running back rankings. It kind of sucks this year. You've got the big 5, and then it kind of gets a little cloudy. After the big 5, you got Marshall and Lynch. But, you don't really know who's going to have a big year, who's going to have a decent year. But we're going to start at the top here. Number 1 running back on my list is all day, Adrian Peterson. No doubt this dude is a future Hall of Famer, first ballot in my books. This guy is a monster. The last time he had an injury in a season, he came off with a torn ACL. He came back and tore up the league for 2,000 yards. This year he's coming off an injury-plagued season a little bit. He was injury-plagued a little bit last year, but still ended up being like the 6th or 7th, I think 5th in my league, best running back in the league. So Adrian Peterson with a new offensive coordinator who loves to utilize the running backs in every asset of the game. You know, people hate on AP because they don't think he can catch, but he recently said in an interview, "I've played this game since I was 7 years old. I know how to catch." So, Adrian Peterson, number 1 running back in my book. And then at number 2, we have LaShawn McCoy with that Chip Kelly Philadelphia Eagles offense. That dude's a monster. It uses his assets so well. Shady McCoy is definitely going to be close to, might even have more rushing yards than AP this year. But I think I'd rather have AP there. Number 3, I'm going to go with Jamal Charles. Charles had a monster year last year, leading the league in touchdowns, and he took the last game off, so he could have had even more. Charles should have been the reigning running back MVP last year, but obviously took the last game off, like I said, so LaShawn McCoy ended up being the leader. But, Jamal Charles is at number 3. Eddie Lacy actually jumps up the list a little bit. I know on most standard lists he's all the way down at 6, but he's going to jump up to my number 4 spot here just because he's such a monster. I think he's pretty much a similar play to Marshawn Lynch, but he's younger. And in that Green Bay Packers offense, sure, they pass a lot, but they run so many plays, they can balance in some running there. And he played well even when Aaron Rodgers was in. So, and then at number 5, I'm going to go with Matt Forte. Forte is just the perfect spread of running back skill. He can run, he can catch, he can block. Forte is a franchise back if I've ever seen one. He can do it all. He's not the quickest, and he doesn't have the most skill, but he doesn't excel in one particular area, but he's great in all the areas. So.
Andy, your top 5 running backs?
It's going to be the same 5 guys, just not in that order. You know, Adrian Peterson will be first all the time, no doubt. But Dylan posed the question to me today or yesterday, would I take Charles or McCoy as the second running back? And I thought about it for a second. And I said, you know what? I'm I would have to take Jamal Charles. And the thing is, I think Darren Sproles is going to take all those carries from LaShawn McCoy. Not all of them, obviously, but he's going to take a chunk out where Charles was already better than him last year anyways. It's just he's on a worse team. So it's like, well, what's Kansas City going to do? They're going to run the ball a lot. They don't even have a good backup. They have Niall Davis. They have nobody to pass the ball to besides Bo. So, that team isn't going to do as well as it did last year, but Charles is going to be the number 2. Boyd 3. Forte 4. Although Forte and Lacey, they're in between 4 and 5. They're flipping back and forth, but both teams are similar. They're both going to pass the ball a lot. But if I were to put money on a team that was going to run the ball more between those two, I would put it on Chicago. So I'm going to go Forte at 4 and Lacey at 5 for running back.
All right, I guess it's true that great minds think alike, as mine are the exact same as Andy's. So I'll just rip through them quickly. Adrian Peterson, I don't think he's a unanimous number 1 overall selection anymore like he was the previous year, but I think the majority consensus would take him, and so would I. Up next, Charles. I don't think Kansas City will be as good this year. We can talk about them. I don't know if we're going to do team previews at any point soon or anything like that. I don't think they'll be as good. I don't think they'll be the double-digit wins team like they were last year. And they'll be competing for the entire 16 games, I think, for a playoff spot. So you'll get 16 games of Charles. McCoy, I mean, I don't think you can go wrong with McCoy. But Sproles is there. He could either take away some carries and some of the production, or he could take away pressure, allowing McCoy to be even better. So there's that. Followed by Matt Forte. Bears are my second favorite team after the Bills right now, and Forte, like Chris said, he does all things great, but he doesn't just excel at the one thing. He can run. He'll get you receptions and receiving yards, and I think he'll be. Although his numbers were slightly higher last season when Jay Cutler was out, I think he'll still be in line for a very productive year. And then the next one I had a little bit of trouble deciding. Obviously, ultimately I decided on Lacey. But Lynch, we know his holdout's over, but he's still got a very talented Christian Michael right behind him on the depth chart. And I've been hearing about Robert Turbin, but I feel like he has less upside than Michael. And Arian Foster has been there, but he's got some injury risks to him. And then there's all the guys after that, like DeMarco Murray and Zach Stacy, that I don't think are near top 5 running back. Or, well, not necessarily not near it, but definitely they don't garner consideration opposed to these guys, I think. So Lacey, coming in for his second year, sophomore slump maybe, but I think he's definitely very talented. Good offense. Aaron Rodgers will be back, so Green Bay will be a threat through the air and on the ground. And yeah, so I'm gonna put Lacey at 5. Next, just so you guys know, we're not gonna do defense or kicker.
We're not doing linebacker or defensive back?
Probably not those either. But I know you guys might be disappointed with that decision, but I guess we'll just keep going down the line. Wide receiver next.
All right. Wide receiver. Um, uh, Top five wide receivers on my list. Obviously, Megatron, Calvin Johnson, number one. Um, had he not been suspended and had he not been a complete asshole, an idiot, Josh Gordon would have been a strong consideration for number one. Um, but, obviously he's not even on my list, and I've got 50 wide receivers here written down. So, um, Calvin Johnson at number two, or at number one. Demaryius Thomas, I've got at number two. He ranked, I think it was top three last year. And without Eric Decker, Peyton Manning is going to be looking for another. He's going to see more passes this year than he did last year, is what I'm saying with Thomas. However, they're facing um, the division with the Seahawks, the 49ers, Cardinals, and the Rams. I don't remember the division name, but they're facing all four of those teams this year. So they're going to have a tough schedule. At number three, I have A.J. Green. Uh, A.J. Green is what I hope Sammy Watkins to turn into. A.J. Green's the only rookie receiver, I think, ever to gain 1,000 yards. And then number four, Mr. Consistency, the only wide receiver that's consistently been a top wide receiver in this league for the past, I think, 7 years. He's had over 1,000 yards and some odd amount of touchdowns. Brandon Marshall comes in at number four on my list. Although Alshon Jeffrey for the Bears looked amazing last year, they obviously showed that both could be extremely productive. And then at number five, he's only number five. He would rank six, but he's number five just because he scores a lot more touchdowns than the guy at number six. I don't think he's going to get as many yards or as many catches, but Dez Bryant comes in at number five on my list just because he usually scores over 10 touchdowns a year. So, that's the thing.
All right, Andy, your top five wide receivers for 2014.
Calvin Johnson. Calvin Johnson, AJ Green, Demaryius Thomas are the clear-cut top three for me. And with Jeffrey playing so well, it's almost like the McCoy thing. Is Marshall the fourth best wide receiver? I don't know. He's the most consistent, so you got to put him up there. And how about number five? There's many different ways you can go here. I don't like Dez Bryant. I don't really like Julio Jones either. I do have a number five wide receiver in mind, and hopefully Dylan doesn't say him because, Dylan, we kind of want that guy, and you're not supposed to say him, so don't say him. If you know what's good for you, you better change your list. Why on air? I'm throwing Julio Jones at number five. He's back. He's healthy. 90 catches a year. We'll see what he does. Atlanta's surely not going to run the ball with 100-year-old Steven Jackson carrying it. So all they're going to do is throw it. So if Julio stays healthy, he'll be a top five wide receiver again.
All right, so hopefully I won't spoil Andy's secret number five, but I'm pretty sure my list is similar to Chris's in terms of players, just different order. Number one, Megatron. He's Megatron. I talked about Matt Stafford and how he could be in line for another 5,000-yard season if the cards fall right. And Megatron will be a big beneficiary of that. some pressure's taken off with Tate and Ebron brought in, and I think that should help him, free him up a bit. At number 2, I'm going AJ Green of the Cincinnati Bengals. He's young, productive, definitely the best thing they got, and they just locked up Andy Dalton with a pretty big deal. So they're going to be probably looking to see a lot of Dalton to Green production from this year, as usual. Number 3, Chicago Bear, Brandon Marshall, consistently up there, always very good. I know that he was down a little bit last year, and people are arguing like Alshon Jeffrey's going to be great, and I'm not saying Jeffrey won't be great. I just prefer Brandon Marshall. I think he has a better rapport with Jay Cutler, so as long as Jay Cutler's healthy, I expect Marshall to be the more productive receiver. But you never know. And then my number 4 is actually Dez Bryant. I'm a big Dez Bryant fan. He's definitely the number 1 in Dallas. Tony Romo's, I don't know if I want to say favorite target because Jason Witten's always consistent, but Dez Bryant scored a bunch of touchdowns, and I heard a stat, or I heard it earlier today, and I already forgot it exactly, but there were like
He was tackled 7 times within the 5-yard line.
Exactly.
This year.
So Chris knows his stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, he was at most 15 feet away from possibly even having 5 more touchdowns than he did last year, and I know there's health concerns with Romo, and that could raise or lower Bryant's stock, but I'm still a Bryant fan this year. And then at number 5, Demaryius Thomas. I know you guys were both really high on him, having him at number 2 and number 3. I don't know. I don't want to contradict myself because I had Peyton as my number 1 quarterback, but Peyton Manning can still be the number 1 quarterback and not have as good of a year as he did last year. That's how good he was. I mean, I'm not saying he could put up just as good of numbers, maybe even better, who knows. But I think I could see the production dropping. They did lose Decker, and those receptions have to go somewhere. But they have Wes Welker and Sanders and Julius Thomas, and Monte Ball in the backfield even. So there's still a good amount of weapons around Peyton for them to be successful. And that's my top 5 receivers. Last position we're going to do for tonight is tight end.
Well, God, this tight end is such an exciting position. There's so many good tight ends in this league. We should do like top 20. But really, top 5. At number 1, I don't know. I've got someone written down at number 1 who shouldn't be. It's not Jimmy Graham. This guy's a huge boomer bust. If he stays healthy, he is going to be the dominant number 1 tight end in this league. Rob Gronkowski is my top-ranked tight end. Would I take him as the first tight end off the board? No, I wouldn't. But Rob Gronkowski, if he was healthy, would be the best tight end in the league for sure. Jimmy Graham comes in at number 2. Julius Thomas at 3. Vernon Davis at 4. And then I was thinking of putting the guy that I have at number 6 at number 5, but Jason Witten is going to come in at number 5 just because he's got such a good rapport with Tony Romo, and he's always pretty consistent. He had a little bit of a down year last year, but the last like 4 or 5 years, I was looking at him like he was up, down, up, down, up, down. So last year was his down, so this year might be his up. So.
And your tight ends?
Graham, Davis, Cameron, Olson, and Witten. Now the reason why I got all these is you notice 3 and 4, that is it. Goodbye. That's all they can throw to. Therefore, they're going to have like 150 targets, and they're going to probably catch 2/3 of them. So I'm looking at, well, obviously not 100-yard catch. Math was kind of exaggerated, but they're going to have top 5 tight end years, in my opinion. Cameron did last year. I think he will do it again. And Olson has shown signs of being able to do that before. And I think this year is the year that, he kind of gets it all together. So, yeah. And then Witten's 5 because he's always in the top 5. And Gronk, I just don't think is going to stay healthy. And based on that, I'm not going to have him in my top 5.
Andy with the tight end surprises there in his top 5. Not lying when he said he was going to unveil some of his sleepers. As for mine, Jimmy Graham's number 1. If there are no tight ends are off the board, I assume that you're taking Graham. Number 2, I put Julius Thomas, big target for Peyton Manning in the Denver offense. Should be in line for a very good year at the tight end position. 3rd, I put Gronkowski because I don't know if he, as Chris was saying, if he's healthy, he's going to be one of the best. That's a big if. And if I was feeling lucky, then maybe I'd consider taking him over Thomas also. But if you're taking Gronkowski, then hopefully you have a good backup plan at tight end because I wouldn't be able to draft him with 100% confidence that I'm gonna have him a whole season. And my 4th was Jason Witten. I just seem to like the Cowboys better than you guys a little bit today, and I think Tony Romo does have his moments where he chokes, but I think he's definitely a great quarterback and could be in line for a good year if he recovers fully from the injury. And then at 5th, I just put Vernon Davis, a solid fixture in the San Francisco offense. Kaepernick's going to be throwing him the ball, so he should get good numbers. And that's my top 5 for tight end. So
I'm putting Julius Thomas at number 5. I totally fucking forgot Julius Thomas. So Julius Thomas is supposed to be in the top 5 next.
There you go.
good work, Andy. Andy was prepared for this segment. We did kind of. I mean, this entire episode has been off the cuff because we didn't anticipate Andy being late. So me and Chris came on and said we'll start with the Hall of Fame game and go from there, essentially. But I'm glad nobody said Aaron Hernandez. Don't draft him. Put him on your DND list.
There was someone who didn't show up to my draft last year, so I drafted him, Aaron Hernandez. He quit the league.
But there's our little taste of 2014 fantasy football season. Maybe I don't know how much more before the actual season we will do fantasy. I know we wanted to do a mock draft for a mock fantasy draft for an episode, but that plan is in the works and may or may not happen. I hope you enjoyed this segment. If you want us to talk more fantasy sports, comment. If you have any opinions on any of our top 5s, comment. Anything on the Hall of Fame game, or David Wilson, or Steve Tasker, or just anything we've talked about tonight, please comment and let us know. We would love to have feedback. And I guess it's that time for our final words tonight. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. Keep it with the first here. Make mine pretty quick. It's pretty simple. The headliner reads, Chad Johnson, still hoping for NFL return. Number 85, currently playing in the CFL Montreal Alouettes, is not giving up on his quest to return to the NFL, as described by a Miami Dolphins reporter. 36 years old, not going to happen. Through 5 games, he's tallied 4 receptions for 78 yards and 1 touchdown in 5 games with these Montreal Alouettes. So he's not even at a catch a game. That would be like a 1-game stat for like a number 2 wide receiver who is having a good week. So I can't see him coming back. Would it be cool? Maybe. Not really. But yeah, Chad Ochocinco, Chad Johnson, I'm still hoping to return to the NFL. Not going to happen, but
All right, Andy. I know you're used to going last, but what's your final word for tonight?
Yeah, I have to say, not going last is a little different. Chris, first though, before I get off on NASCAR, is he gonna play the Charlotte Bobcats this coming week or what?
yeah, him and his teammate Kevin Hart are going to dominate the Charlotte Bobcats. Kevin Hart is the star running back, okay? And they will win with J.P. Lossman as their quarterback. Except J.P. Lossman plays for Las Vegas. So,
Oh, this guy.
oh, and
All right. So now that I got that on my system, it was there. I had to take it. NASCAR. So this weekend they race at Watkins Glen, which is, as I said, last episode, only an hour and a half away. It's a 2.45-mile oval. It's about 100. It's a fast road course. So the average speed is like 140 miles an hour, and there's 13 turns, rights and lefts. Actually, on road courses, they go backwards. Most of the time, you think, oh, they only make 4 left-hand turns, and that's because they go in counterclockwise. While at road courses, they go clockwise. So everything's different. Oh, that's a big difference. Well, it is. To pit teams, when they change the tires, they practice doing like the right side first, then the left side, like 100 times a day, and it comes down to the tenths of a second. Like a 13.1 second pit stop, like to change 4 tires on your vehicle, 13.1 seconds is slow. It's good, but it's slow compared to the teams that are putting up 12.7, where the margin of victory could be 1/10 of a second in the end of the race. So that's a big deal. Pit stops usually 4 seconds longer here, so that's why I said it. They believe Marcos Ambrose will put a big push into winning this weekend. He's won 2 of the last 3 races at the track, and the chase new format is if you win a race, top 30 in points, you're automatically in the chase, unless more than 16 drivers win, which is impossible at this point. So if he wins, he's in. That would put both Richard Petty Motorsports cars into the championship chase. That'll be the first time even one got in since the inception of the chase in 2005, I want to say. Either 04 or 05. And that's more than Roush Racing, which was the top 4 team all the way up until this season every year. Well, actually, what am I saying? Before Penske got there. So for like a 7-year run, they were the top guys. Um, Watkins Glen. It'll be a great race. A lot of bumping and banging. 90 laps. I wish I was there. I think I'm gonna get when I get older. I'm gonna get tickets so I can go every year because it's an experience that I have won a few times and it's a great atmosphere. People are like, "Oh, NASCAR sucks." Being there is a lot different than watching it on TV. Watching it on TV is really boring, but the atmosphere of a whole weekend around NASCAR, camping out, and then watching a race, is pretty good. So, um, yeah, that's my preview of this weekend's race. So, yeah.
All right, so my final word is, well, first I'm just going to say a little fun fact because Chris mentioned the CFL. I heard recently watching SportsCenter that the quarterback for the Winnipeg Blue Bombers is none other than University at Buffalo alum Drew Willie. Back the previous time where UB was good and we went to bowl games, he was our quarterback. The days when we had James Starks and Naaman Roosevelt. And he actually won the Grey Cup in 2013, which is the championship for the CFL. In case you didn't know, I didn't know until just now. So, and this is a little fun fact. My actual final word. I don't know if on Sunday you guys had spoken about what happened to Paul George or not. So, I'll briefly mention at the USA camp, or it was a game, the like blue versus white or whatever. He went up for a block, came down, and with his foot against the sort of base of the hoop and broke his leg, like right in the middle of the calf, kind of bent. It's a pretty gross video. I recommend you watch it, but it's not for the faint of heart, but it's one of the sports injuries that, like, if you would ever seen the Kevin Ware injury, it's sort of comparable, I guess. And he is now, as you can imagine, out for the season, but which is a big hit to the Indiana Pacers. And on Tuesday, he posted a picture of Instagram of something he bought to cheer himself up. I don't know if you guys have heard about this, but he bought himself a brand new Ferrari 458, a car that sells for upwards of $250,000. And I mean, it's a gorgeous car, especially the one he bought, white with a nice red stripe on the hood. It's beautiful, but I don't know, the fact that I don't know where I was really going with this final word, but I mean, he makes so much money that just on a whim, because he broke his leg, he decides to buy himself a Ferrari to cheer himself up. It must be a nice luxury to have when you are a professional athlete. So it sucks that he broke his leg in the exhibition scrimmage, but now he has a $250,000 beautiful Ferrari. So I guess that's my final word for tonight. And it's 10:06 right now. We didn't know if we would make it an hour, and it's like we're like an hour 50 minutes in right now. So it's amazing how much being in the moment can carry you to for a show. If you watched this show, thank you. If you watched all of it, especially thank you. If you've watched any part of it, thank you. Come back and watch us in the future. Recommend us to your friends. We have a show every Sunday and Wednesday at 8 p.m. Like, comment, favorite, subscribe. And am I forgetting anything, guys?
Goodbyes.
Yep, feel free to comment, and we'll see you on Sunday. Bye.
Peace out.